Hattie, and I am back with another addition to my film series, which is going to be The Black Pearl from the Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, I know that a lot of people were probably expecting the house from the Pirates of the Caribbean, but I thought, no, I want to do a pirate ship. I've always wanted to do a pirate ship in The Sims 4, and I just thought this was the perfect opportunity to do that. And it's something that's really out of character for me to do, because I always like to play it safe with really pretty houses. But I think that this one is so different to what I've created in the past. And I actually really liked it by the end, so I really hope you can like it as well. It's not on the Sims 4 gallery yet. It's going to be on the Sims 4 gallery when part 2 is out. So when you see part 2 out with the interior of the build, then that is when you will see it on the Sims 4 gallery, and I will leave some links below. But I had a lot of fun making this, and I've always had a fascination with pirates since I was a really young child. I used to go canoeing with my parents and my sister when I was about 10 or 11 years old, and I used to wear a skull and crossbones bandana, and I used to have a flag on the back of my boat, and I found it so much fun, and it was a little bit of a joke, but I absolutely adored it. I even built myself my own pirate ship when I was a little bit younger, but I made it out of cardboard and I painted it all black, and it just looked really good back then. But if I saw it now, I'd probably think to myself, that's a little bit strange. It's not a pirate ship, it's probably just a box, but I loved it. I really did, and I had a lot of fun when I was a child just thinking about pirates, writing pirate stories, and that was one of my fascinations as a really young girl. But anyway, so back to the build. At this point, I was just getting the frame of the ship. I had a lot of trouble with this. And what actually happened as well, bit of a funny story here. What happened was I built this whole thing. It probably took me about 4 hours to do. And then I realized that instead of recording the screen, I only recorded the audio. So it was only me ruffling about like on the keyboard building it and also listening to music, and I didn't have any of the screen on it. So I had to rebuild the whole thing completely, and I did it in one night. So I spent about 8 hours just in one night building 2 creations of the ship. So the first one I unfortunately can't get back, but the second one is this one, and I feel as if it turned out a lot better than the first, so I'm pretty happy with that. And I actually did spend a lot less time doing it because I knew exactly what I wanted where, so it saved me a lot of time, so that was pretty good. What I was doing here though is I was trying to work out where the staircases were going to go. I was also trying to pick out a really good fence for the build. I tried to use the really tall fence, and to be quite honest with everybody, I adored it. I love it to bits, and I'm really happy that I found it because I think it goes so well with the build. And I was thinking to myself as well, if the pirates were in a really bad storm or something, they would have to hold on to something, and I just think that that would be the handiest thing to hold on to, because I think that for a ship to not have railings, I just think that it's a little bit unrealistic. So I think it gave a really nice effect, and I was very happy with using that. This was when I was doing the sails. The sails were so incredibly difficult. Probably one of the most difficult things I've done on The Sims 4, and also one of the most irritating, because what happened was every single time I messed about with the fences, the pillars would disappear, and this was happening because it started to register the fences as an actual room. So as long as you don't close off the little bit here where I've got the plank bit, everything should stay exactly the way that you see it, and it should all be completely playable, which is pretty good. But of course I had to include a plank because that is one of the best features of a pirate ship. I thought that using a little one there would be really nice, so that's what I did. I did add something else to it in the end, which you will see. It's a little bit of a curtain thing which comes over it, but I think it gives a really lovely effect by the end. But this was when I was doing the actual captain's quarters over here, so I was trying to plan it very carefully because I wanted something very grand for the pirates' captain's room. So I think that what I will do is I will have a lot of fun doing that when I do the interior of the build in part 2. So if you stick around for that, you will see how I decorate the captain's bedroom, which will be a very glamorous red and black room, I think. These were the barrels here. So what I was doing is I was trying to make some cannons, and I think that it worked in the end. I really tried with this part. I mean, I tried my absolute hardest to make them look like cannons. So I really hope that you like them because I spent a lot of time doing it, but I think it was worth it. And I think that it does give a really lovely effect. Even though they are a little bit different in colour, I think that it still goes really nicely with the build. And I think that a pirate ship without cannons wouldn't be a pirate ship, and I would need cannons, so I'd settle for those. I mean, I can't have any other colours in them, unfortunately, but if you can think of anything else which would make a better cannon, then let me know, because I could always change it in part 2 if anyone can think of something that I can have there instead. Just let me know what you think. This was when I was just adding some windows around the bottom of the ship. I didn't want anything too fancy, so I just put some little windows because I thought with having so many grand windows over everything else, I didn't really want to spoil the build and just have only really large windows. So adding some pillars and things like that, just general decorations for it. Was also resizing some of those wooden parts. I don't know what they're called, but you have them on cottage roofs and you have them round the trimming of the roof. And I was enlarging those and I was putting them on the ship, so that was pretty good. And this was, of course, when the pillars were disappearing again, so you'll see me re-add them and stuff. I didn't include all the footage for that because I think it took me probably about 5 or 6 times to go over that part, so a very long time, but definitely worth it. And here I was making the sails. So what I decided to do was I really wanted to incorporate the spooky stuff pack curtains that we got. They look really old, and I thought with a pirate ship being a very old ship, which is supposed to be a stolen ship, I guess, and at one point this would have been a very glamorous ship and it would have been for very wealthy people and they would have had very grand sails, and I thought that these curtains would be really appropriate for that because they look like they were grand at some point. And maybe they would have been really lovely, I mean, at some time in history, but now they are all tattered and I just think that it looks really lovely. So that's what I did. I mean, it's not the prettiest thing to look at, but I think that it's definitely the most accurate way that I could have had it for this ship. So I was pretty happy with how it was all turning out and I was feeling quite positive about it, to be honest. I was trying to incorporate some skull and crossbones banners, which just so happened to be in the Sims 4 Get Together expansion pack, which we got, which is the Renegades logo for their club, but I think that the skull and crossbones is just so incredibly appropriate for this ship, so I was really happy with using that and I think that it looks really special by the end. What I was trying to do is I was trying to make the sails a little bit longer because I was thinking that I really did need to pay close attention to the pictures. Unfortunately, I couldn't have the actual sails looking the exact shape as they do on the exact pirate ship itself, but I really did try to get it as accurate as I could, so I hope this is accurate enough. I put a stone lady on the front of the ship because I wanted them to have an ornament on the front there. I think it's called a figurehead. I did actually look it up, but I think there's a better word for it. If anybody knows what it is, please let me know. But it's basically like an offering, I guess, or it's just a good luck charm for the ship itself. As far as I know, that's what it is. So I put one on the front there and I think that it really does look special and it's pretty accurate to what the ship does have on itself. So I was pretty happy with that. What I was doing here is I was improvising a little bit, trying to make it look a little bit more detailed as we can't have any rope. I really wanted rope and I did try to incorporate some spider's webs, but they just didn't go. So what I did instead was I just put a railing around the fence and I think that it looks quite nice like that. I was also adding some further detail just above the windows there to make them look a little bit more sheltered and to make it look a little bit nicer than it did. I put a little bit of ivy around the ship as well, not too much though, only a little bit, to really make it look like it has been there for a very long time and it's got something growing up the sides of it. Maybe it's ivy or seaweed, I don't know, but I thought that it was a really nice touch to an old ship, so even just a little bit, I think that it goes a long way, and I didn't want to overface it too much, so I didn't add too much of it, but I think that just a little bit looks quite nice, so I was happy with how that turned out. what I was doing is I was trying to make some room for further doors, and that's what I was doing over at this part. I was also putting some really pretty flowers around the front of it, and I was also just piling up some of these really nice things that I found. They're a little bit like points, but I'm not sure. They look like chess pieces, but I thought that they looked really lovely to make sure that it looked pointy and it made the sails look a little bit nicer than they did. So I was happy with finding those. And I think they really did help me out on this build, and I think they look pretty accurate to what I saw on the pictures and things, because these sails themselves do have little points at the top, so I thought that they looked quite nice. I was also just going around and adding some shelves. I thought the shelves were very important in this build, and I thought that the shelves gave a really nice touch as well. I did add some flowers inside the shelves, which I think looked really nice. And I know that the black pearl probably wouldn't have flowers like this, but I thought that I would still want my own touches on the build as well. So I only put some little flowers round, and I didn't put very many of them either. But if you think that it looks a little bit better without the flowers, then you can remove them if you want to. I mean, it's completely up to you what you want to do with this ship after it's on the Sims 4 gallery, it's yours. But I just thought for a bit of fun I'd keep them there because it's my build after all, and I like flowers, what can I say? I think that maybe the bits of red really do make this ship look a little bit special, and I didn't use any other colours other than red, so I think that that was a good choice. What I was trying to do here is I was trying to get the sail of the skull and crossbones, because I noticed that their sail swings to the side, of course, when the ship is actually on the water and they are at sea. It does swing behind, of course, because of the wind and things, so I thought that it would look really lovely if the sail was actually doing that. And I was really happy with how that looked actually. It did take me a long time to do though, but I think that it was definitely worth it after it was all finished. And what I was doing at this point is I was trying to make sure that I did have something along the top which looked like rope. I mean, it's not the best solution, but it's the only one that I could think of. So I just used some flags which have the skull and crossbones logo on, and I think that they still looked nice, but it was very difficult matching them up because I really had to make sure that they matched completely, and it was very difficult to do because they had to be the same height, and because they're so thin and difficult to see, it was very difficult. But I think it worked out quite nicely in the end, and I'm happy at the way that they looked. I think that it's probably the best solution that I could have really had, and I couldn't think of anything else to have. And I think that they do look special looking like that, so I'm pretty happy with it. I was then incorporating some spider's webs. I did keep these ones actually, so I just didn't go too overboard with them because I thought that if I went too overboard and started adding loads of them, then it wouldn't look very good, and I just wasn't really sure about it. So then what I was doing is I found this ornament and I was stacking it up to try and make it look a little bit like stairs or a rope kind of stairway. So I wasn't sure what it really does resemble, but I think that it's probably the closest that I could have got, and I thought that afterwards I think that it does look nice, and I think that it goes quite nicely with the build. So I hope that you like this, and I hope that I did an okay job at doing this because I think that it's probably the best I could have done without, of course, using custom content or anything like that. I didn't want to because I don't like using custom content in my builds, and I try not to do it, so I guess that's what I was really thinking about at that point. I was then using some shelves, and I was putting the shelves in between the ornaments, and I think that they look really good like that because I think that it does look a little bit like rope or stairs. So I guess it was a good in-between way, and it does look a little bit more like a pirate ship after me doing this. That's what I think anyway. And if you wanted to try this out for yourself, then I will do a tutorial at some point on how to use BB Move objects because a lot of people have been asking me to do something like that, so I will do it. If you want to see it, just let me know and I will try to do something like that. And it will be mainly on stacking objects like this, moving things around, enlarging things, just things like that. So that should be pretty good. I was then doing the same on this side, so it took me quite a while to do. I think this whole step probably took me about an hour, maybe an hour and a half of the build, and it wasn't even a big part of it, but I just think that little details like this really do make the ship itself, and I was really happy with how they looked by the end. So I mean, it didn't really matter how much time I spent on it because I'm quite patient when it comes to things like this, and I think it looks good. So as long as it looks good and people are happy with it, then I guess it's all fine. So that's what I did. I was also just doing a little bit down here as well. I didn't want to really waste too much space down here because I did want to really think about when I do part 2 and when I actually put some objects down here. I wanted to leave a lot of space for that. I wanted to leave lots and lots of time for me to really think about decorations that I could have. So I didn't want to waste too much space doing this. So this was the last bit of this rope that I did put down this area, and then what I did is I just went on to the other details of the ship. But I was happy with it. I think it looks nice. Also put a little grid below, so if you notice that, that's just a rug that I used. I couldn't find anything else which resembled a grid, and I thought that a grid was also important for a pirate ship like this. It would be a trapdoor, and it would be a way that the pirates could really get down to the base very, very quickly. So I think that that's quite nice, and I'm happy with it. But even though it is a little bit of the interior, I guess, because it's a rug, I still think it looks quite nice, and it is part of the exterior as well, so I wasn't really sure it fitted in, but I thought for this part I would definitely include it, and you could see what I did there. This was when I was finding it very difficult to do this bit, because as I got further and further up with these shelves, it got trickier, so I had to really pay close attention, and I had to make sure that I wasn't putting them in any places they shouldn't be. But when it was finished, I was so incredibly relieved. I think this was the last row that I did, and then after this I went on to do some more shelving. Shelving was very much used in this build though. I think that shelves are very important for a pirate build like this, so I'm really happy with how I ended up using them, and I think they look really nice by the end, so I'm happy with that. I was trying to incorporate this stone here. I wasn't sure whether to use it at the front, but I thought because of the stairs there I wouldn't. I did actually include that in the first pirate build that I did, but then I thought with this one, no, I actually think it looks better without, and I'm pretty happy without using it, so I guess that looks quite nice. Then what I was doing is I was just adding some further details. I was putting some pillars round, you can see there. I was trying to make sure that the sails didn't look too terrible to the side there, because I really did feel as if I focused a lot on the sails to one side of the ship, and you can only really see them from the front angle, and then to the sides you can't really see them at all, and it's just not thick enough. So I did try and include some little sails, I mean not too much, but enough to really see it and to be able to see it from all different angles, because I thought that that was really important with this ship. So that's what I was doing at this point, and I was also trying to make a curtain above the pirate logo at the top there, so you'll see that in a little bit. It's actually very difficult to do, and it took me a really long time, but I think that the sails and the curtains really do go with this build, and I'm really happy with them. I know that they might look a little bit strange to some people, but I think that it's probably the best I could have made out of a bad situation, so I'm happy with it, and I like how it looks, so I think I'll definitely be using them again another point, because I think I like it. So I do want to focus on more strange builds like this. I mean, if you've got any ideas that you want to see on my channel, if you've got any builds that you want me to build, then let me know, because I will be listening to the suggestions. And if you've got anything you'd like to see after this, then just let me know in the comments, because I'm up for really strange builds as well, whether it's being a spaceship or something really, really strange like that. I'm definitely up for a challenge. And I think that I enjoy builds like this. I think that it's quite a nice, unfamiliar build for me to do, so I was pretty happy with that. But what I was doing at this point is I was going around the sides here, and I was trying to make the pool area look very, very strange. I was trying to make it look like a deserted island. I mean, I don't know how this ship would have possibly got here. And to be honest, I would have loved this open pirate ship in the water next to us. I think it would look really, really special there. And I hope at some point we will get a really big plot, maybe a 64 by 64, which is actually in the water. I would love that. And I really hope that we will get that. I mean, maybe in the next months or years, I don't know. But I think that this pirate ship would look really special if it was actually in the water itself. But I just had to improvise, and I had to make sure that it looked the best as I could get it. So I was quite happy with how that turned out. Then I was going around the sides here. I unfortunately did that part backwards, so it meant that I had to do everything in a little bit of a longer order. So I was just going around here and putting the pool in. I was so ready to change the pool colour. I was feeling really happy about it at this point because I did have an idea of how this build would look after I put all this pool bit in. And it does look really special, I think, by the end. And I was very happy with it. And it was a long process to do the pool this way because, of course, it does take a very long time to do pools like this. And it is a little bit irritating, especially going around all the sides here. But it is a very big ship. It's on the 64x64 in Winterberg. And I think that it will need a lot of space to do things like this. So I was prepared for all that stuff. So by this point, I had changed the pool colour to a browny, dirty colour. I think that it looks really nice like this because I think that it's very accurate to what the ship would really be in the films. I think that the ship is supposed to be dirty and it's supposed to be a mystical ship, which is pretty dark and gloomy, and I think that in this sort of setting I think that it looks really nice, and I think that it's probably the closest that I could have got it to the films, and I think that it just looks really good like this. So it does look a little bit evil, but I think that I like it. I do like this ship, and it is a little bit gothic, but I think it looks nice. So I'm happy with how it turned out, and what I was doing at this point is I was just putting the plants in. I was also just going briefly back to the ship and I was putting in the last details that I would want there. I was trying to make sure that this part of the back here wasn't too big because I felt as if the point at the back was just far too big for the ship, so I was adjusting it and then I was back to the water. I did decide to change all these rocks to black, which you will see in a little bit, and I think that looks really special once I did that. I was also trying to filter out the spooky stuff pack. I was trying to find those lights there because I thought that lights in the dark, the school ones, would look very special, and even though I don't think that the ship itself would have these kind of lights, I think that they are really accurate to what I would expect the Sims 4 version to have inside. And they do look a little bit like rope as well, which I really like about them, and I think that it's interesting to think about the possibilities for this ship, of course, if all this stuff was usable. If the Sims could actually swing off those lights, I think it would be pretty interesting. I don't know, I was having a lot of fun with it at this point as well. I was then putting some of these really highlights across the top because I thought that because the ship will be at night at some point, if it's really dark, I thought that they'd look very special like that. So I was very happy doing it that way, and I think that they look very nice by the end. And they did match up, so I was happy with that as well. And I think that at night when they sparkle, or they glow rather, I think it will look good. So I was just trying to make sure that they were completely even at that point, and I was happy with that. I think that it does look a little bit like rope, and I think that it's probably the closest that I could have got. So yeah, I was having a lot of fun with that. What I was doing here is I was trying to make it look like there was a ladder here because I already had one ladder at the bottom, but I did want one up here because I wanted a ladder to look like it was a little bit higher up, and I wanted it to look like the ship was really climbable and that the Sims could climb up here, but of course they couldn't. It's just for decoration, but I think that it looks nice that way, and I was happy with how that bit turned out. Then I was round to landscaping, which was really just adding random orders of these plants round the sides here. I didn't do my usual landscaping style. In fact, I tried to do it as quickly as possible because I didn't want it to look too neat, and also it was supposed to be messy. It was supposed to look like a pile of weeds. It wasn't supposed to look very lovely or anything, but I think that it still does look actually quite nice towards the end. But it is just a random placements of rocks and plants and things like that. Nothing very special, and nothing that I spent a lot of time on. It probably took me about 15 to 20 minutes just to do this part, but I think that it still looks nice this way. And I was trying to add as many different plants as I could. So I think I probably used about 5 or 6 different plants or weeds in this part, but I think it looks good. I used the stray grass parts, so I don't know how to explain them, but I used the really tall grass in these parts as well, which I really like. So I was just adding random orders. I was doing it all the way around the back as well. I was trying to make sure that I didn't miss any parts of the build, because sometimes that can happen, especially when you've got a lot of landscaping to do. Sometimes that happens to me, but then I go back later on and correct it and it looks okay, which is quite nice. But yeah, so I was just going across, I was adding the little last trees. I'd of course changed all the rock colours by this point. I decided to go for the really small black rocks just around the landscaping because I think that it does look quite nice like that, and it does fit in with the build itself, so I like it. And then I was just adding some final trees. I was thinking about what to do with the front entrance because I thought it looked a little bit plain like that. So what I did was I moved some of these plants. I started enlarging some as well, which I love to do, of course. And I haven't done a lot of in this build actually. I mean, in terms of enlarging plants, it was really just the standard size that we get, which I was using, but I think that it looks quite nice sometimes when I enlarge things like that. So what I did was I just went round and I enlarged these red, beautiful plants that we got with the Sims 4 Romantic Garden stuff. It's one of my favourite stuff packs, and I just love using these red plants, and I think it goes really nicely with this build. So that's what I did. And that is the end of the build. So I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you all for part 2. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to show you the screenshots now.